Welcome to A Cup of Gratitude with Amanda Schaefer. Hi, I'm your host, and I'm so glad you stopped by. This podcast is really for anyone, anywhere, anytime. And it's about taking a moment to slow down and look around and actually see all of the good things that are there. There's no question that asks, is your cup half empty or half full? But I think a better question is, what's in your cup? I mean, a drop of gratitude will benefit your life unimaginably more than a full cup of anything else. So let's settle in and take a look at how we can shift our focus and embrace the joy and the wonder of the life that we have. And once you start, you won't be able to stop seeing the good. And just like me, you won't be able to stop talking about it. And somehow that creates even more. Even in the midst of difficulty, even when it's really hard. Learn how to drink from a cup of gratitude. Welcome. Today I am speaking with Kim Mosiman, who is a woman smack dab in the middle of her second act. Her children are grown and joyfully living lives of their own. She enjoys writing, traveling, and perfecting her technique in her new role as Nana. She is a certified nutritionist and personal trainer who closed her small boutique gym in 2017. And she thought she was ready to retire during the day that faded into the sunset. But the sudden career change created a lack of purpose in her life, and she was alone during the day and abandoned the good habits that she had counted on for many years. As a lifelong coach, she recognized the signals and slowly turned her health back around by adding small, sustainable practices into her daily routine. She documented her journey and felt called to share her story. Her first book, Reflections of Joy, was released in May of 2024. It is a Christlit Award winner. And it stands out as a vital resource for women entering their second act. Mosiman nudges readers to let go of the things that have held them back so they can explore the world of opportunities available to women in their middle years. She recently released a companion journal, My Owner's Manual, to help women learn the importance of gathering data in their quest to age well and stay healthy. Kim became a certified Christian life coach in 2023 and has recently expanded her offerings to include wellness coaching and helps new authors launch their books into the world through her coaching business, Writer to Writer. Welcome, Kim. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Amanda. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to have you because those of you who listen regularly and follow me on social media might have guessed from all of the graphics we have been sharing that Kim is part of helping me launch my newest book. And I've got to tell you, I have never felt more positive that I chose the right person than I do right now. Kim is just amazing. And we'll talk about this a little bit later on in her story. But I want to just say, if you're someone who's listening, who has written a book or is writing a book, Kim is your girl.
Thank you, Amanda. That means a lot to me.
Well, you know what? The way that you handle everything means so much to me. I am really someone who, at heart, just wants to link arms with others and help everyone run their race well. And that is part of how you do what you do as well. And it's your heart. And when I find those people, I do not let them go. And I sure make sure that they know they are really, really appreciated.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree with that more. The more we linked arms, the bigger the kingdom becomes. And so I'm all about it.
Yeah, I always say, let's make heaven more crowded.
Exactly.
So we do things a little differently over here. I like to start at the beginning. And I think that when we start in our childhood and work up to what we're doing now, we get the chance to see the beautiful threads and themes that God has woven in our story. And sometimes there are things that He deposited there on purpose. And sometimes there are things that happen, situations and circumstances from just living in a fallen world. But He somehow takes it all and works it together for our good and for His glory. And so I love that kind of backstory part because unfortunately, if someone were to meet you right now, they would just say, oh my goodness, well, she's this wonderful Christian. She's accomplished, she's this, she's that, all of these positives and not fully understand maybe how you got there. And when we leave that part out, when we don't share the whole story, I think people sometimes maybe think they can't do what God has for them, or
Mm,
parts of their story that they're not really wanting to look at aren't going to allow them to do what they would love to do for God. And so I think it's so important to share, and I love when people are willing. Would you be willing to start in your childhood and tell us a little about that time?
sure. Um, I had a good childhood. And my mother is one of my very best friends and someone who has given me my, um, I like to think of rosy disposition in life. She's a
Mm,
beautiful lady and she just naturally is caring and kind and someone I aspire to be. My father was also a kind man, very smart and wonderful in his own right, but he had um, some trouble and with alcohol and was just a different person when he was
mm,
drinking than he was the rest of the time.
mm-hmm.
But as is the case, I think with most people, what you're living seems normal until you
Yeah.
discover something different, And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until so childhood went on, la di da. I was a swimmer. My sister came along when I was 4. We lived in a wonderful house. My parents gardened. We didn't go to church, but we believed.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was raised with a strong faith background, and she changed her route when she married my dad. And but God was still very important to her. So even though we didn't go to church, I feel like her faith was a big part of our my childhood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, but when I reached my teenage years, my
Oh, wait, before you get
oh
to your
yeah,
teenage
yeah, yeah,
years,
yeah.
I have some other questions for you.
Okay, okay, yep.
Okay. So first of all, I love that even though you didn't go to church, you recognized her reflecting her faith, back towards you. And I think that's an important thing to just take note of, that you could recognize that she really had one. I'm sorry about part of your experience. It's having dealt with people with addiction in my life. It's very difficult, but I never dealt with that really as a child, and I'm sure that left some residue on top of your story that wasn't meant to be there. I think it's so interesting how God, though, peppers in people around us to help us find Him. And
Mm,
you had told me specifically, I love how much of a friend your mom was to you. She was a good role model, but she really was a friend. And you had told me about this particular time, and I didn't want to skip over this. Um, when you took a cab to
yeah,
go learn French because you were in this gifted program. So, number one, you were in a gifted program, which is amazing, but that you had this experience, and I see your mom being the one to foster all of this, which is
yeah, oh
why,
yeah,
yeah. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. You know, I was lucky, I guess, and school was very easy for me, and I was identified early on in my elementary years
Hmm.
as being eligible or meeting the requirements to join the first cohort of a talented and gifted program in my city.
Hmm.
And they didn't have all the kinks worked out, and which really I think was quite good for me because we as the students could identify things that we were interested in, and we had a
Hmm.
little pot of money that the school district could spend on us. So I was enrolled in French classes in the middle school, the one that I
Hmm.
would attend, 3 years down the road. But my funds paid for me to get from the elementary to the middle school every day so I could attend class and learn something that I was interested in.
That's so cool. Why did you pick French?
I as I look back, I don't have a clue. I and I wish I would have chose Spanish, I suppose. But at the time, I
Hmm.
remember being just intrigued by food and
Hmm.
all things French. It just
Yeah.
special and kind of I, mm, we lived a very ordinary life, and it just seemed special.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wrote on the side, and this is why I wanted you to answer. I
Mhm.
felt like God used this opportunity to allow you to get to choose, which is really unique, and to be able to get there to transport you into another world.
Mhm. Yes, I can see that too now that you've said that.
Yeah,
Um, I really feel like I didn't realize it at the time. At the time, I just thought it was cool.
yeah,
As I look back now, between God and my mom, there were a lot of opportunities for escape from, and,
hmm
and again, my life wasn't bad with my dad, but there was this underlying need to be
hmm
perfect. Um and so at home, I think as the oldest child and whatever, you try to protect and you try to make sure that
hmm
that the waters don't get stirred, and so we can just live this normal happy life and no one's mad.
yeah,
And that comes with the pressure that I don't think children realize till it's gone,
yeah.
and you finally exhale and you realize, wow, that
hmm
was harder than it needed to be.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not what you were meant to do.
yeah.
And honestly, I think it makes you hyper vigilant and you also become a people pleaser when you want everything to be perfect. And so it puts all the, unfortunately, I know all these things because they happen to me too, and I
Yeah.
can recognize it. And so that's the power of looking back though, because when it's happening, like you said, you don't know till you know. You just
Yeah.
don't until you start to see what it's like in other places. And that's where God peppers in these opportunities to be in healthy places and to see and choose, the things that are better for us. And it's not that, I'm sure he would prefer to have us not experience any of these things, but it's part of the dance until we're on the other side of heaven,
Mhm.
between being fallen and being chosen. And I'm so glad you're chosen and that you've been able to move forward and heal. But I'm so sorry that you had to go through that because when you do, you don't really get to be a child. And also, you're the oldest. So you also took on this responsibility of needing to be the one caring for others. And when you do that, you're not attending to your own needs.
I would agree with that. Um, but but I wouldn't, yeah. I think about those things and I write about those things, and I've really explored them as I'm doing my own writing and reflections of joy. As you know, writing a book, it stirs up things in you that you just were like,
hmm
you thought that you had healed and stored, right? And they're just really not. You just kind of
Yep.
folded the corner of the page over and filed it rather than really working through it. And
Mm.
um, yeah, but I think going through those things, Amanda, really put me in the place to be the woman that I am today.
Yeah,
Life was
absolutely.
rough. I mean, like we had rough nights, and never, some people say, well, like abuse isn't always physical. Sometimes it's just this emotional
hmm
um level of tension that lives in a house that you look back and you realize it changes you. But through it all, even through that, I can look back and I can see the positives. And I know now
Yeah.
that I choose to see the world as the beautiful, positive, joy-filled place that it is,
Yeah.
because you can't always dwell on what's going wrong in your life or the sadness, or there's always a bright light, right? It doesn't matter
Amen. That's why
what
I
it
like
is.
you
Yep,
because
yep.
you learned the same lesson that I did, that even in the darkest and most broken places, like God is still good and he's still there. And I always say this, can you imagine, right? So when you look around and you see beautiful things in creation, like flowers and birds and animals and the way things are created, right? The way that they work. It's just so beautiful. It takes your breath away, a sunset, right? And
Mhm.
then you think about the fact that's the world in its fallen state. Can you imagine how gorgeous it was before it fell?
Oh, I know. I know. And there are times when as you know, I get to the privilege of wintering in Florida near my oldest son.
Mm-hmm.
And there are mornings when my feet are dug deep in the sand and I watch a
Mm.
sunrise that could never be dreamed
Yeah.
by a human.
Yeah.
And again, this is in a world that is far from perfection. And
Mm-hmm.
gosh, imagine the one
Mm.
who created that.
I
So
know. I
yeah.
know. And we get to be with him in for eternity, and so we'll get to see heaven. And we've only had little glimpses in the Bible of how beautiful that is. But I mean, I think we're going to just spend all of eternity seeing new things about God, because I don't think we're ever going to see all of him, for all of eternity, and just having breathtaking things all around us, and and just being in constant awe, right? We get to
Yeah.
be in that identity of child who's just awe filled for eternity. How cool is that?
So cool. Yeah.
So you had told me when you were in middle school, things began to change a little bit. Can you tell me about that time?
Yeah, they my well, this my mother finally experienced, that proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, and
Mm-hmm.
um she asked my dad to leave our home, and he did, and he moved into an apartment nearby and dried up. He didn't
Mm-hmm.
ever work with anyone or work a program. He just quit drinking,
Mm-hmm.
which was all she asked of him. And
Okay.
this is many years ago, and I don't know that substance abuse programs or even mental health programs were as proactive as they are today. But he dried up, and he eventually came home.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the moment when I realized how messed up my childhood had been, because my mother and my father and my sister and I would sit around the table, and we became that dream family. Um,
Mm.
they, he
That-
we just
yeah.
he helped with homework, and we took family vacations, and we went places together, and we went to church as a family, and for the
Wow.
first time. And it's not that I don't think we were ever hiding anything before. We were just it just didn't fit into our dysfunctional life
Mm-hmm.
when my parents were fighting and my dad was drinking.
Yeah.
And that lasted for a couple of years. And it was just life was so amazing and everything I had prayed for.
Yeah.
And then he was injured. My dad was injured at work and couldn't work for a while and was hurt and kind of turned back towards
Mm.
drinking as a way to
Mm-hmm.
comfort his body.
Mm-hmm.
And because he didn't have the help that he needed, he fell right back into his
Yeah.
old habits. And she had told him when she asked him to leave the first time, when she accepted him back, that was it. There was no, second, third, fourth chances. He'd use those up.
Yeah.
So they divorced, and he moved he moved to Utah. I live in Iowa, so he lived 20-hour drive away, and
Wow.
he just really he was still dad, you still love him, but he wasn't a presence in our life anymore. So
Yeah.
and then my mother fell in love, and a few years later I was uprooted from my family, my friends, my swim team, my church, everything that I knew, and
Mm.
deposited in a completely different town. And that's when
Wow.
I kind of like just threw my hands up in the air and said, "Yeah, I'm going to just do whatever I want to do and nothing matters
Mm.
anymore."
Well, there's quite a lot in that little bit of time of you just taking us back. And I just wanted to say, first of all, what a beautiful gift that you got to have that time of what healthy felt like,
Mm,
and what um, an example when it wasn't healthy anymore of good boundaries of your mom, of her keeping her word and
mm,
knowing, that she wasn't going to go back. I think both of those lessons are really, really important, and it's just such a beautiful gift that you had that time as a family to
mm.
feel healthy, because I'm sure that helped when you moved on to have your own family. And I'm sorry about kind of that whirlwind, because when you were describing, and then my dad moved away and he was 20 hours away, and then my mom met someone else. And that's a lot of change. And then I had to move and leave everything. Those are the
Mhm.
moments where, yeah, people do come undone. I mean, what is the point? Nothing seems like it's going the way I thought it would go. Do you remember having feelings like, did you have a relationship with God at that point yet that you felt like he was maybe not helping you out or not doing his part? Do you remember feeling anything towards him?
I don't, relationship with God was not maybe act or, like I was through the motions. Like
Yeah.
I would go to choir practice at church, and after choir practice, then I would go to youth group, and on Sundays
Mm-hmm.
we'd have confirmation class. But I didn't really have a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going through the motions. And so what happened in my life was never God's fault. I didn't ever identify my situation as being forgotten or, um, yeah, it was just God was never a part of it. It was
Yeah.
just basic human interaction and human
Mm-hmm.
um,
That's actually a good
relationships that
thing.
had
Uh,
gone wrong. Oh, I
yeah.
believe it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
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 Because it's a lot harder when you're angry at God to get around to having a relationship with him than when you don't even consider him
Yeah.
and things happen in the world. Now, what was your relationship with your stepdad like?
So my stepfather, I feel like, was everything I had hoped for, but he was completely different than my dad. I behaved for my biological father because I didn't want to rock the boat.
Mm,
There weren't, I mean, there were unspoken rules and like the way you're supposed to behave that we all
hmm.
know, but there weren't rules.
Yeah,
But again, I was a child with my biological father. I was a teenager with my stepfather.
true.
Um, but his method of raising my step siblings was to have rules. He had rules, and you followed the rules, and you had a way of doing things. And my sister and I just weren't really up for that. So, there was a great deal of tension for a period of time where um, my poor mother, she's stuck in the middle, right? Because she loves this person and she finally has a partner in raising her children. And then she has these daughters that are saying, whoa, stop. This
Yeah,
isn't going to happen. And
yeah.
both my sister and I, in our own time, um, were not very good children, good
Hmm.
daughters,
Hmm.
because we were being overtly naughty. And, but, but coming out the backside of that,
Hmm.
and becoming a parent, I can look back and reflect. He was doing what a parent's supposed to do. A parent is supposed to limit their child. They're supposed to have rules. There's supposed to be training and
Yes,
and
I
and
I literally
making
wrote
us.
on
Yeah.
this side of the page, we discipline those that we love. Even God says that in his word about us as sons and daughters. And here's the thing, what you had from your father, if he wasn't present all the time, it
Hmm.
wasn't going to be that. So it didn't seem, you don't know when you're a kid, but I think all kids really do somehow know that somebody cares if they're giving them order,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. But I punished my mom for choosing his rules over me.
Mm,
I was just not necessarily very nice. And she's like I said earlier, she was this kind, compassionate, loving to a
hmm.
fault kind of woman.
Yeah,
And I just can't imagine now what I put her through then. I
yeah,
have apologized, but it was a rough couple of years.
yeah. And you know what? You know this too as a mom, but mamas love their kids even when they do things that they can't understand or that they don't want them to do. We never stop loving them. And honestly, there's got to be a part of her that understood that was a big transition for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but she was happy for the first time in so many years that
Yeah,
um and she chose her and her relationship a couple of times, which again, good
yeah,
boundaries for her
yeah.
because that's
Hmm.
what we should do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and those are good examples that you got that maybe you didn't understand them or like them at the time, but they were there. And to me, that's a blessing. Now, tell me, did you go to college? Did you get a job? What did you do next after high school?
I went to college with full intention and lots of dreams, but I was responsible financially and
Hmm.
wasn't able to get financial aid. And so I was trying to work full time and go to school
Wow.
and working one out because one has to live. Um, and and I loved what I did. I worked in a restaurant. I was good at it. I was offered an opportunity to step into management. And my parents hadn't gone to college, and they were happy for me because I had proven my worth and I had learned some things and was being looked at for um, a management job.
Yeah.
So they encouraged me to quit school and to
Yeah.
take the job. And once I quit, I never looked back. I worked. I loved my job. I loved managing and coaching people.
Hmm.
And then I fell in love, and I fell in love, was engaged in December, was married in October, and had my first child the following October, 3 days after our anniversary.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big turnaround. What was
Yeah.
that time like?
Crazy, but very good.
Hmm.
I think I told you when you and I talked earlier, everything in my life has pointed me towards um, being a coach or being a
Yeah.
mother or being, and what better way to live your life than raising children? It's what I always
Hmm.
wanted to do. You know, if
Yeah.
if if in elementary school, if they would have said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" and I could have just simply said, "I want to be somebody's mommy," I probably would have chosen that. Um, so it was good, but I was 21 years old when Zachary was born,
Mm.
and we were working, as restaurant managers and not making much money. And life, we were young, and life was full of stress, and both of our parents had been divorced, and there were just
Hmm.
no, gosh, times were hard,
Yeah.
and and we didn't have great role models as far as how to make a marriage last, and our marriage didn't last. We divorced a few years later
Hmm.
when Zachary was young. We vowed to one another and we maintained a friendship. We loved one another. We had a child together, and
Hmm.
we've honored that for now 35 years.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I am thankful for that. My ex-husband is an important part of my history and my memories, and he gave me Zach. So
Yeah.
how wonderful is that?
Amen. Yeah, exactly. I love how God will bring blessings out of things that maybe 100% don't end up lasting. He'll bring something beautiful out of it, like
Mm,
children. I didn't know Christ until Uh, I'll be 24 years in May and I'll be 61 in May. So do the math. And I got married and divorced twice before that. And, it's amazing to me how God gave me these two beautiful children who love the Lord and are the biggest blessing to me. And he gave them to me through these unions I didn't even ask him about. I didn't even acknowledge
mm,
he existed, So God is there's a very good example of God being good, having our children even when maybe their relationship doesn't continue on. And I love that you guys stayed connected. I stayed connected to my first ex-husband, and we had very good positive relationship as well. So that is a win-win as far as I'm concerned. Now, when you were talking before, I wanted to just say you mentioned always kind of loving managing and coaching and that making a lot of sense. And I wrote on the side of my page, as I do, you're just a natural encourager. Like you are a Barnabas. You are somebody who is meant to do that. I see a spirit of motherhood on you as well.
mm. Yeah, yeah. I feel it. I feel at my very best when I'm interacting with someone, and
Hmm.
my very best days are when I have either been able to encourage someone
Hmm.
or teach them something and watch
Mm-hmm.
that little light go off in their eyes when
Yep.
they finally are just like, oh, I can do
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
where God just pointed out the spirit of motherhood thing, and you just affirmed it right there. Because
Yeah.
that's what, honestly, I don't know, people have weird ways of when you hear spirit of. I'm not saying anything wacky. What I'm saying is this is a spiritual gift that God gave. And I see it as maybe when you were younger, unfortunately, you had to be more adult than you were supposed to be. But he took that and he made a positive thing out of it.
Yeah. Maybe
And
so.
you
Yeah.
use that now as a gift to give to others and build up and edify other people. And you're another one of those people like me who you're constantly cheering people on. You want everyone to succeed. There's room for everyone. There's no competition, and we should be linking arms and helping one another. If we're meant to be one family in Christ, we really should show the world that. And it's one of the things I love about you. Do it very well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, so you did get married again,
I did.
and you're going to tell us a little bit about that time in your life?
Yeah. I did marry again, and life was good as it was. My second husband
Mm-hmm.
loved my son, and we ran restaurants. Life was very busy. He was more than happy with just loving my son. But I
Mm-hmm.
convinced him my son needed a brother or a sister.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 7 years old when Samuel was born. And again, life was good, and it was busy, and I thought we were just going to be this happy little family. I fell when I was 8 months pregnant, and
Mm.
went to the hospital, was checked out, everything seemed fine. But then Samuel was born early and with significant problems. His hemoglobin was very low, and he wasn't able to, um, because his hemoglobin was so low, he was counting on me
Mm-hmm.
entirely for oxygen.
Oh, wow.
And once that cord was no longer there,
Mm-hmm.
he crashed, and we almost lost him. He had a couple of
Wow.
transfusions in his first couple of days of life, and I have never, up until that time, I had always prayed to God in thanks. Like
Mm-hmm.
we were talking earlier, I walk outside and I'm very attuned to things, and I smell fresh cut grass and I thank God. I
Mm-hmm.
feel the sun and I thank God. But I had
Mm-hmm.
never, up until that time, turned to God and said, help me. I
Mm.
can't do this. It was my
Mm-hmm.
very first time in understanding that I had no control.
Yeah.
And, I prayed, my husband prayed, everyone prayed. And somehow, through the miracle of God, Samuel is fine. And we received confirmation when he was 6 months old
Mm-hmm.
that he was the first child with his numbers and his condition to survive without brain damage or without
Wow.
death.
Praise
And
God.
yes,
Wow.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and no reason, my doctor didn't even think it was odd. He walked into Samuel's doctor's appointment and said, "Oh, I just presented a paper on him yesterday to my colleagues." And I thought, well, what for?
Wow.
So,
Wow.
God is good, and
Yeah.
Samuel's here because
Mm-hmm.
of God and the power of prayer, and God's hand in quick thinking doctors and
Mm-hmm.
all the
Yeah.
things, right?
Absolutely. But a pivotal moment where
Mm-hmm.
you suddenly realized you cried out because you needed God. It wasn't something you could fix. You had been a person in control. You had been the manager. You had been the big sister. You had been the peacekeeper and the people pleaser, and you had been in control. And this was not something you could do. And so I love that pivotal moment where you cried out because you needed God. And look, he answered.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
He did. He
isn't he
did.
good?
Yes.
So, you two ended up opening up a business, correct?
Yes, yes.
Tell,
Well,
tell us about that.
we worked together in the restaurant, and we spent life talking about the restaurant, and we talked about the boys. And
Mm-hmm.
um, before that marriage turned south and we just got sick of each other, um, he I had just started working out, and I was feeling good and feeling fit. And I
Mm-hmm.
told him I want to do something different. I don't want to work in the restaurant. I think we need a split in our careers. We need something new to talk about. And with the blessing of my family, I opened a gym,
Mm-hmm.
and where people would we had people come in big groups, and it was kind of a challenge sort of thing where they would take a picture, everyone would work out together for 9 weeks, and then there would be another picture and a prize, and
Mm-hmm.
group fitness. And it was amazing, amazing. I met the most fabulous people, and again, my it fit because someone could walk in the door feeling crummy about themselves, but I could see the potential. I
Mm-hmm.
could see what was already good. I knew how to help them. And I
Yeah.
think it was just God strengthening that coach pin
Yeah.
on my lapel, right? It's what
Absolutely.
I
I
was
wrote
meant to do.
coaching, and it also that I am sure that helps you kind of herd the cats in launching groups of people
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
with book launches, because there
Yes.
you have had such a great way of keeping everything organized. You have such creative ideas, and yeah, it does take a lot of work though, and it takes being prepared and having things set ahead of time. And that's one of the things I was so happy for, is that we had all our ducks were in a row, but then like you have these great ideas of when we should use what and how we should do it. And you learned what to do and how to empower people, encourage people, and actually keep things organized, which is hard to do.
Yeah, it's I think it's a nice mixture of working in restaurants for 20 years,
Hmm.
and then, having that coaching gift from
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So, you had that business for a little while, and then you told me at one point y'all had to close the gym. What was life like at that time?
I had the gym for 7 years and loved every minute of it. But at the
Hmm.
time, my husband's job was slowing down, and he was able to. Oh, one year he went to Arizona for a month, and I stayed back in Iowa in the snow and woke up at 3:50 in the morning to coach people. And I just didn't envision our golden years, if you will, being separate. And
Hmm.
so we made the decision to close the gym.
Hmm.
And then things didn't work out that way. He got pulled back into work
Hmm.
more, and I sat at home without kids in the house, without a gym to go to, without any purpose in the world except for myself. And
Mm.
um, my health habits kind of spiraled out of control. There just wasn't any point. And a woman without a purpose is a sad, sorry thing. And so you can just turn a lot of different directions, and
Yeah. Yeah.
drank a little more wine and ate some crummier food and gave up
Hmm.
my exercise habits, and just really became someone that I had been working with. I let my health go, and I wasn't happy.
Hmm.
And but through it all, I was a faithful journaler, and I've journaled ever since before I would turn 40.
Hmm.
Um, because I like being able to look back and see what worked for me and what didn't. And so
Hmm.
even through this crummy time when I had no order in my life and no purpose, I was still journaling. And one day, as I was writing, I flipped a page, and at the top of the page it said, um, "You are altogether wonderful, my dear. There is no flaw in you," from the Song of Solomon.
Mm.
And it was the turning point. It was that one thing that caught me, and I read it,
Hmm.
and I remember gasping
Mm.
and thinking, he loves me. I mean, I'd had When
Yeah.
life gets busy, I have a tendency to put God on a shelf. I've done
Hmm.
it my whole life. And
Welcome to humanity, right?
right, right.
Yeah.
And when I don't need him, I know he's
Hmm.
there, but I don't always turn to him on as I should, as a good friend. And it's like in that moment when I was at my lowest, there was
Mm,
word from him, and I realized then he's always there.
yeah.
And um I became a little bit more intentional with caring for myself, and I started working through the program I had used with my clients all the time on my own behalf, and
Hmm.
writing and recording, and eventually turning those journals and those moments into what would become reflections of joy.
I love that. And you know what? Here's the thing. Yay for journaling, first of all. It is the
Mm,
best thing in the world. And I would say if you're listening right now and you don't journal, just give it a try. And there's something about the looking back, same thing about the premise of this podcast. I will go back in. I have kept journals since I was a little kid. I have got boxes and boxes of journals, and I don't really know what my kids are going to do with them when I'm not here anymore, but that's their problem. But I will go back with like a different colored pen and write the date and look for things. And I started noticing this is when I realized that God is always speaking,
mm,
and that it's not that he isn't talking, but it's that we are not actually listening or
mm,
or postured in such a way that we might actually hear him. I always use this example. If there was a line on it with some dots and you were listening for God, you would maybe think the dots were the times that God spoke, but God is the line. He is
mm,
constant, and the dots are when we hear him. And so when you go back, you will see that maybe you noticed one time the truth that he told you, but in an amount of time that you're looking at, he might have said in 1 week 6 different things that were all the same truth, just in different ways. One through a billboard, one through a book, one through a person, one through his word, and you realize, oh my goodness, I missed all those. I'm glad I
mhm.
got the one. So sometimes when we go back, we can actually get these beautiful little treasures that we missed and see how he's always there. I love that.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you also found your way step by step into interacting with him and using your writing, and that is what became Reflections of Joy. I also love the title.
Mm.
So tell me, you said, and I thought this was so powerful, that you, when you were doing that, you were working with your most demanding client. Who was that?
It was me.
Yeah.
I'm terrible. I'm still terrible. I don't know how in the world anyone loves me or tolerates me for the long
Hmm.
term,
Uh-huh.
because I have the attention span of a gnat sometimes. And even today, even in this moment where I have come to a place where I feel pretty good about who I am and in my walk in this life,
Hmm.
um, and I have a faithful prayer practice, but I'll catch myself, and it's like, I'm sorry, God, I didn't mean, I mean, like I'll be in the middle of a prayer and just like
Hmm.
interrupt with a thought about
Yep.
beef and broccoli or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
And yeah, it, yeah,
Well,
I am so
honestly, that's
grateful.
most of us, and I spend a lot of time mentoring younger ladies. For some reason, my people are like 18 to 25, and one of the things I heard most from some of them is that I'm trying to be still and know that he is God. I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to focus in. I'm constantly, my mind is all over the place. And I said, here's the beautiful thing about God. First of all, you will get better at it. The more you do it, you will get better at it. But when you wander, when your mind goes somewhere else, just return back to him. Just get your eyesight back on him and focus on him. And what he's looking at isn't the fact that, well, okay, you got interrupted 25 times in 10 minutes. It's the intention of your heart
Hmm.
to actually focus on him. That is what he's looking at. And so he's well pleased, and you'll get better at it.
Hmm. And the thing that I would tell those same women, if next time one pops up, for me, setting a timer has been just a game changer. If
Oh,
I
that's
set a
awesome.
timer for 10 minutes,
Hmm.
somehow knowing that I'm time bound and I
Mhm.
in 10 minutes is nothing in the whole scheme of things. I
Mhm.
can clearly focus on my prayers or on my
Mhm.
journals. And sometimes I'm in such a deep role that I'm annoyed when the timer goes off and I set it to go again. But I have learned that it being time bound allows the
Freedom.
clutter to clear. It is
Yeah.
freedom. It's
Yeah.
freedom because I'm not going to miss anything.
Yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
And when you get to know him, when you've done it long enough, right? And you don't maybe necessarily need to set a timer anymore. When you
Mhm.
know his character, he proves to you that he's the God of time. Like we live in confined time. He does not, right? We're in Kairos time. He's in Chronos time, right? He's the Lord
Right.
of time. And so I've had instances where I was so enthralled with what he was showing me, and I was digging and looking things up, and all this time's going by, and I knew this was late when I first became a Christian. I still had to go to a job and I knew I had to go to work. And this one particular day, I'll never forget. I was like, oh, I do not want to stop. God, I just love you so much. This is so good, but I'm going to get fired if I don't go to work. And I closed my Bible and I started to get up to go get my coat. And my phone rang and I got a paid day off from
Oh,
my boss because of illness that was going through. And I thought, what in the world? And that was God just being like, hey, I want to hang out with you too. Here you go. And you don't even have to like worry about the day's wages.
wow. That's awesome.
And for me, that I only say it to say that it's possible that sometimes, God will make it happen. And there are other times where maybe it's not miraculous like that, but you spend the extra time and you're running late for work, but you had that time with him, and somehow the whole day just seamlessly falls together and nothing's wrong.
Hmm.
He'll do both.
Yep.
Yeah, he's so good. Could talk about him all day. Oh, wait a minute, I do. Now, you went on, you joined Hope Writers in 2019. You published
I,
your book through Hope Books. What was that like for you?
it was great. I always thought that I would write a book.
Hmm.
And I thought that I would write the book about the gym. So I would just kind of a manual or a how-to book on for people to learn how to get healthy. Let me teach you
Hmm.
what we do. Um, and it was through my journaling and through my own experience that that kind of turned. And I started thinking, I wonder if it should be a little bit more my story than just a to-do book.
Yeah.
And 2019, I thought I wanted to write, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on spending the money to go away for a conference. And so I signed up for the online version
Hmm.
and, spent my $200 and sat at my kitchen table for 3 days in a row. Every session that I could get, took notes, streamed, whatever,
Hmm.
and started following. And we know what happened in 2020, but I kept writing and I kept blogging and
Hmm.
he'd kind of set the book thing to the side. And then out of the blue one day, I received an email and a lot of email, we all get a lot of junk email. I don't pay
Hmm.
attention to advertisements and things. I look at what I need to look at. But one stuck out to me and it was the opportunity to apply for Hope Books. It was going to be
Uh-huh.
it was the very first cohort.
Uh-huh.
They hadn't existed before, and I wrote down my idea and I sent in my application. And 2 weeks later, I had almost forgotten about it, but I received a "We'd love to publish your book" email, and I
Awesome.
remember just feeling like, this is it. This is the sign. I'm going to do this,
Yeah.
and it was amazing. Like I said, I was in the first cohort, and there were 40 of us, I suppose.
Hmm.
And we met online. I've met people through this process that I would have never otherwise even known existed, even with the blessing of social media or the internet. You just don't know who you don't know. And
Yeah.
I have some people who have become incredible friends. And one business partner, writer to writer, is with a woman that I met through this program.
Hmm.
And what it did, like I said, I always knew I wanted to write a book. I always had that inkling, but I needed a deadline. I
Hmm.
needed a structure, and I needed to spend some money on it. To be honest, if I spend
Hmm.
money on something, usually carry through.
Right, right.
And so, yeah, I wrote my book. I went through the process, and it came out last year. And when it came time to launch, I realized how much I didn't know about social media or about um, the capabilities of online communication.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, being with you're traditionally published, but
Mm-hmm.
you've had other books as well. And I mean,
Yep.
like it's up to us as the author to get the word out.
Even when you're traditionally published, it's
Yeah,
up to, I mean, you do have someone else doing it, but it's not the same as it used to be. You don't have books showing up in a warehouse somewhere. They're digitally printed out, and you've got to get people interested enough to push the button to buy them.
exactly. And so I learned all the things. I dove headfirst into every book I could read, every program I could take. So many influence or not influencers, I guess they are. So many creators out there are
Mm-hmm.
offering lead magnets that are full of incredible information.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned to put my lead magnets together, and I learned how to build a launch team, and I learned the communication that I needed to be doing. And I loved every minute. And I loved it so much that I was helping those fellow authors that
Right.
needed someone. And a good friend, a mutual friend of yours and mine,
Mm-hmm.
her father wasn't in very good health, and she had spent so much time writing this beautiful book. And um, I knew that she was worried about being torn between spending time with her dad and launching her book. And so I reached out to her and said, "Hey, I've been thinking I'd love to help you." And she's like, I've been praying on this and I've
Mm.
been thinking about you too, and I would love to work with you. So the two of us worked together on her launch. Um, she's infinitely talented with Canva and communication, and her strengths like met my weaknesses and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
we really pulled together a great launch for her. She
You did.
allowed
I was
me.
on the team. That's how I came to ask you to be my launch team manager because I loved the way that you did everything. I've been on a lot of launch teams for a lot of books, and some of them are done really differently. And it just resonated with me the way that you approached everything.
Yep. And I'll always be thankful, to
Yeah.
Dawn for giving me a chance to practice. I considered it
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
And fortunately, she didn't need to take that time away.
Hmm.
But I learned so much about myself and where God was leading me
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And I'm not washed up. I still have purpose. He still wants me to coach. He wants me to coach until the day that I die. And
That's right.
right now, that's in the world of, I still work with some people in wellness. I'm working with some people in writing, but my passion is in teaching women like myself, like you, how to really love this time of life. We're
Hmm.
not fresh out of college with all the knowledge about how to put a book out there. We had to figure these things out. I'm sure you had to figure out podcasting, all the things. And
Hmm.
I love this opportunity to meet people and help them explore their strengths and to snuggle in alongside of them and to support where they need me.
Yeah.
And yeah. And
Yeah. I've absolutely just loved it. I like I said, I asked her afterwards if I could get your contact information. And with me taking care of my dad, who's 94, I wanted to be sure. I believe that I could have launched on my own, but I don't think I should have launched on my own. I think there were some things that I didn't know. There are a lot of things I could do myself, but a lot of things that I couldn't. And there's a lot of things I'm glad I didn't have to do on my own. And, I haven't really talked about this at all, but, we had all of our ducks in a row. We had everything so ready and we worked really well together. You had a very similar aesthetic, and I just love your creative side. And then my book went up it's available on pre-order right now. I don't know when this episode's going to come out. It'll probably be out by then. But just maybe a week after it went up on pre-order and we were just still gathering the launch team, I had a horrible fall and I needed to kind of rest and not be my regular self. And I could because I knew you would just be like, hey, you need to share this. You need to do that. I did this. I did that. And it was awesome.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry you had to fall, but I'm glad that I'm glad that we worked together the way we did.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my business partner, my coaching partner and Leah and I, we
Hmm.
talk a lot about how launch starts long before the book ever is
Oh,
available for pre-launch.
yes.
And
Yes.
you've done an exceptional job at communicating with people through the podcast, through your work, through your social media, long before I think you even thought about this book.
Hmm.
Um, and that's so important. And it's reflective in the way that people are responding
Hmm.
to us right now,
Hmm.
during your launch. I think I would tell every person writing a book, launch first, write the book while you're launching. Just get
Hmm.
out there and share yourself and share your information and share what God's telling you to tell.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we all have very particular audiences. Like I said, there's no competition and there's room for everyone,
Mm-mm.
but God has something very specific for you to do, and you need to understand your full story so that you can do it, which is why I wrote the book that I wrote. And the thing that I love about you is that you not only are helping people, but you also recently wrote kind of a manual. Will you tell us about that?
Yeah. Leah and I, again, we both have our own strengths. And as we were planning a small cohort to practice our skills and to practice our coaching together, we gathered a small group of women and we created a plan for them to go through this cohort. And it went very well. But there were some glitches, and we took feedback from this initial group of women that we coached,
Hmm.
and reformulated our workbook. And one day I said to Leah, we should just print this.
Hmm.
This is great. And not everyone's going to be able to invest in a launch manager. Not everyone's going to
Hmm.
be able to join a cohort just because of timing or whatever the case is. But there's no reason why they shouldn't have the information. So
Hmm.
we put out this manual, and it's called Ready, Set, Launch. And there's white space in there, but there's a
Hmm.
ton of information and just a way for,
It's great. It's really
yeah,
good. Yeah.
our hope is that you could just sit down and learn what you don't know you need to know, like we did.
Yeah.
We put
Yeah.
everything in there that we learned,
Yeah.
plus a little bit more that we learned from our clients along the way, and things. Yeah,
Yeah. It's an
I
amazing
love it.
resource. It really is. I love it too. And honestly, there's just not a thing, like I said, about this whole process that I haven't thought was top notch and so helpful, but done with the best heart. Like, you love God and you love people and you use your gifts. And if somebody were to use you to help launch their book, that's what they would get.
Mm.
And you're also very organized and creative, all the things. It totally makes sense that this is what you're doing. Now, we had talked about, and I always wait until the end, guys, because I know our attention spans are not always so great. Um, that I'm going to have some links and things in the show notes for you to access those books as well as to follow Kim on social media. But we had talked about doing a giveaway whatever week your episode ends up airing. Is that something you'd still like to do?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to. And the best part about doing a giveaway is I'd like to give away a book, but then also a call with that, because I'm just like you. The more
Hmm.
people I can meet, the more friends I can have, the better
Awesome.
this life is. Yeah.
Very cool. I can't wait for that. That is going to be one to jump into, guys. So, and if you don't already do it, I do giveaways almost every other week, if not every week lately, it seems. If you follow me on Instagram, a cup of underscore gratitude, I don't normally mention it, but that's where I run all the giveaways. That just seems to be the place that works best. And I give away some really amazing things. So I am so fortunate. I always say I'm the luckiest girl in the world. I have the best friends. I am so fortunate and blessed. So, I have one more question for you. Honestly, we could get a cup of coffee and talk for hours, and we do, but just not on while recording. So, this would be the last question I have for this episode. So, I always end every episode with this question. I know we can't go back and change anything, but the person listening might be able to apply the wisdom of your answer to their situation or their life right now. So, if you could go back and give your younger self any advice, what would that be?
We talked about this a little bit, and I've thought about it since that time. And I think if I could sit down with her and talk to her, I'd tell her just not to be afraid. That
Hmm.
that everything, follow your heart, take the risks, write
Hmm.
the book, do the things. Don't be afraid because God is there. And yeah, don't be afraid. Just take the first step
Yeah.
because you never know where you're going to end up or who's going to be there with you.
That's right. And you know what? That is awesome advice. Very wise. I would definitely take it. And I just want to take a moment to thank you for being willing to share your story. And thank you that you help other people share theirs and you help them make their dreams a reality. That's an awesome thing to get to do.
Mhm. Thank you. I am the luckiest girl in the world, Amanda.
I'll fight you for it.
All right.
All right, we are the lucky. You know what? Anybody who really is a child of God is the luckiest person in the world because what you end up doing, you love doing what God gives you to do for your calling.
Exactly.
So we're both right.
Yep.
Okay, it's a draw.
I'll take that.
Anyway, thank you so much. I really appreciate your coming on and sharing, and looking forward to sharing your story.
I've enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too.
Hey, so I just want to thank you so much for spending your time with me. And I want to challenge you to go out today and to just take notice and to stop and really look around and find at least one good thing, one thing to be thankful for. You know, if you do that today, you're going to find so many more things tomorrow without even trying. Because once you start, you begin to see what's always been there. And if you need a refill, you can come join me again for another cup. Make sure to subscribe and have an awesome day and go be grateful.